But then when I thought about it, you know, I have a lot of skills to give, and radiotherapy is just, you have to have attention to detail, be calm under pressure, be a very good communicator, be a people person, just to name few. You you grow up, go to university, you get a good job, you get something with a excellent pension scheme. You do the work, you get married to someone, and then, you have children. That generally is your trajectory.
For anyone who is currently in a healthcare role, starting to think, I can't do this for another 5 or 10 years, I want out, what advice would you give them? Hello and welcome to episode 2, season 2 of the Get a Shift On podcast. And this week, I'm so pleased to welcome along Pooja Patel, who is a former radiotherapy radiographer like I was, which is always nice. Pooja, welcome along.
Hello, thank you for having me, David.
It's an absolute pleasure. How are you today?
Really well, thank you.
Amazing. Good. So, Pooja, I want to hear all about your amazing story. We've spoken offline before, so I know a little bit. But for those people who are new to you, listening to the podcast or watching it, please explain where you started and where you've ended up to today.
So I started my career in radiotherapy in 2011. So a long time ago now. I had a very extensive career all around London departments and around Buckinghamshire. I love radiotherapy. I feel that I always will love radiotherapy. It's a part of me that, I will never be able to, it won't leave me. And then I became a mum to my little girl. And now I have my son as well, who's a year and a half. And I've hung up my radiotherapy hat, as you were. So I am now full-time mummy, and I'm pursuing my postpartum support app called Nanny. The idea from it came when I was in the middle of the night, sort of walking backwards and forwards with my son. My daughter was an amazing sleeper, but my son was just a wild card of all these feelings and just, a lot of emotions, and did not want to sleep, just was too busy to sleep. So I had this idea for this app, and I just kept coming back to it night after night, really, when I was walking around with him, trying to get him to sleep. So that's kind of where the idea was born from. And then whilst I was on maternity leave, I was deciding whether or not I would go back into radiotherapy. And when I became a parent, I did kind of question myself that what do I want from my career? Where do I see myself? And I didn't quite have that answer with my daughter. And then with my son, I sort of thought, do you know what? I want to do something that gives me a little bit more flexibility. As much as I loved radiotherapy and I loved meeting the people, the shifts and the commute, bearing in mind it wasn't a long commute for me, but I just still felt that it was a little bit too much for me to kind of do the drop-offs, go to work and then come and do the pickups, because it would be primarily me that would be doing all of that. Not to say that, I know that a lot of other people do that and it works really well for them, but I just kind of thought for myself, maybe there's something else out there. So, but it was quite scary in a way, because radiotherapy has been such an integral part of my career, and also, I would say, for a long time, part of my identity as well. Sort of thinking, right, I love radiotherapy, and I talked about it in my first date as well with my husband, which is a bit mortifying to admit, but, I clearly loved it that much at the time.
He is now your husband, so clearly you did something right.
Exactly. And so, I just thought perhaps there aren't any transferable skills that I had. But then when I thought about it, I have a lot of skills to give. And radiotherapy is just, you have to have attention to detail, be calm under pressure, be a very good communicator, be a people person, just to name few. And it was just that confidence moment for me, thinking, do you know what, Pooja? Like, you can do it. And you can try, and you don't have to be perfect at everything. You can kind of just move the needle 1% every day and just try your best. So that's kind of what my story is and where I'm at now.
Yeah, and that's so true. And thank you for sharing. I think that's such an honest version of where you started, where you've ended up now. And wow, so much to touch on. And I want to cover each of those independently. I've made some notes. I want to come back to skills, especially. As you know, we've spoken, and skills is really, for me, the foundation of what people need to look at as they move forward to a different career. Because we have so many skills. And I will come back to it, but I will just say that actually the skills that you've mentioned are actually to a penny in healthcare. We see them all the time. Everyone is good at talking under pressure, speaking to patients who are struggling through whatever, talking to their families, working in really tough conditions. I understand that outside of a healthcare role, and actually you have almost like a superpower because it's not usual. And I think people forget that, and that's something that's really important. And we will come back to skills, but I want to go way back to the beginning, and I'd love you to explain to people listening and watching what radiotherapy is. Now, clearly, it's my background, so I understand it. And when you said a long time ago in 2011, I qualified in 2003. So that's a really long time ago. If 2011 is a long time ago. But just briefly, for people who may not understand what radiotherapy is, can you explain what it is?
So radiotherapy is treatment of cancer cells with high doses of radiation. So, for example, if you go to A&E and you break your arm, you get an X-ray done, and that then takes a photograph of the area that's broken. But with radiotherapy, it's the same type of X-rays, but just at higher energy. So basically, they're able to go inside the body and sort of kill any cells that we don't want, and then thus preserving healthy tissue around the area as well. And it is quite precise. It's not, there's a lot of planning that goes into the delivering of radiotherapy treatment, even though kind of when you see the machine and you're lying down on the treatment bed, it doesn't really look like anything's happening. So a lot of patients, I remember at the time, were quite confused, sort of say, oh, well, is that it? Kind of thing. But there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes with regards to kind of planning the radiotherapy, making sure that everything's precise and spot on. And it requires a certain type of skill, expertise. I know that nowadays, with a lot of AI and everything else that's coming in, I think the field of radiotherapy would definitely be supported by AI, but there definitely needs that expertise at the front end as well to kind of make those clinical decisions, and under pressure as well, because you have a time constraint, so.
Thank you. And that's why I got you to explain it, not me.
Yeah.
Because clearly your knowledge is far newer than mine. Blimey, when I first started, we still had lead blocks that screwed into a Perspex plate beneath
Yeah.
the Linac. Only radiotherapy people will understand that, so apologies to anyone who's not from radiotherapy background. And I'm sure we can talk about it. It's been really nice actually to get to talk to you and know you over the last couple of weeks because it's very unusual. Radiotherapy is a very small world, right? There's not that many of us. There never has been. So it's quite nice that you can, there's certain things that we share that just people wouldn't understand necessarily. What was your favorite part of being a radiotherapy radiographer, and why do you love it so much?
I would say that my favorite part out of everything was to meet the different patients that I met all throughout my career. With radiotherapy, you can either, patients sometimes come in for a week, a day, couple of weeks, or a month of treatment. Building that rapport with them was actually really nice. You get to know different people, they talk about their lives, their expertise, and I felt like I was always learning from the people that were around me, whether that was staff or colleagues or patients. I feel like the most rewarding element of that career was to meet with the patients and, to help somebody through what is, a really difficult time in their lives. And the concerns that a lot of patients had and came to us with, they are valid, because if you don't know the field, you kind of don't know what to expect. Whereas I think sometimes, if you've been in a career like radiotherapy or perhaps in healthcare in general, there is that element of sometimes might forget what what the other side looks like,
Yeah.
because you feel you do it every single day, so you think, okay, this is normal. But actually, for people coming in and who, it is daunting. And so, just that reminder of actually, helping someone through a difficult time is something that, you have an opportunity to do. And I think people in radiotherapy just do that really well naturally. That most people that come into the profession are people, very, very people like orientated, and they talk to people really well and explain what's happening really well, which is really nice.
I think for me personally, that's why I went into radiotherapy, not diagnostic, like you explained earlier, not CT, MRI, etc. Because I knew you build those relationships with patients. And I think that's really what I wanted. I wanted to have that longer term relationship. I wanted to get to know patients. And I think you're right. And one of those skills actually right there is that empathy that we have with patients. And it is hard sometimes. And I think when you do the same thing day in, day out, and radiotherapy can be quite monotonous. Actually, if you're on
Mm.
the treatment floor, there is
Yeah.
quite a lot of routine, like any job, especially in healthcare. There's a lot of just normal stuff that goes on. I think it's very hard to sometimes take a step back and think about it from the patient's point of view. And they don't know what's going on. They don't know the machine makes funny clicks and whirs, but you don't feel anything. Why'd you run away from us? What are you doing? You
Yeah.
know, is it safe? We're hiding behind a monitor and concrete walls. Why are we here? And I think just being able to reflect back on that really, really helps. What do you miss most about working clinically?
I miss the people that I worked with. I had in quite a few departments, you end up building like a really close team. And I think that's true not just in radiotherapy, but in healthcare in general, because you have, you know, the people that and you are a close knit team. You have to work well together. So that's like an integral part of the job. So you do end up forming, long term friends from those places. And that is something that I will really miss, as well as the patient interaction as well. And it's funny that you touched on kind of how there needs to be empathy. People generally have empathy within healthcare because you're talking to other patients, helping them through a difficult time. But I felt like in radiotherapy in general, for myself, I I would feel so much for the patients that I cared for. And obviously, there is that professional boundary there as well. But I ended up coming home after the end of the day and just feeling like my child at that time and my husband wouldn't be getting the best part of me, because I'd already given like all of my speaking, my care, my attention, my effort, my emotional effort at that time. And then I felt like when I got home, I was tired and I was feeling a bit grumpy and I just kind of wanted to have dinner and go to bed. So it was that sort of element of it as well that was a little bit tricky to manage sometimes, but that sort of informed my decision a little bit that it was probably time for me to hang up my hat of radiotherapy.
And I want to come back to that again, actually, because I think that's that for so many people listening who are considering, you know, is it time to do something else? Maybe thinking, I really can't do this. Maybe it's the birth of a child. Maybe it's another major life event, a divorce, a death. I think when people have those major life events, that is when the brain starts to tick and we start to think, hang on, something isn't quite right. You touched on it briefly then. So when your daughter was born, and then latterly your son, what were those type of feelings that you had that made you start to question what it was, or made you start to question the future in radiotherapy and maybe spending more time at home with them?
I think even before I had kids, I felt that I did want to be there for the bath times and the bedtimes. That feeling was very important to me. But for me, I think it was a confidence issue, that because I'd spent so long in radiotherapy and that was what I studied, it was that feeling of, okay, do I have any other skills in my arsenal to then deploy elsewhere? And I just thought, oh, maybe that's something I can't do. But then, the more and more that I looked into kind of women in business, and looked around online and saw so many people, having their own businesses during the school hours, I sort of thought to myself, well, why not me? You know, um, I can try, I can do what I can. And this idea was just something that was too powerful to ignore. It was just something that I felt compelled to do in a way. So I thought, well, I have to act on it. I have to do it. And if it's not perfect, fine. I think in radiotherapy as well, the type of person that I am is I love everything to be perfect. I just love that. And that was kind of how I prided myself on things for a long, long time. I loved that element of radiotherapy. It has to be. You have to be that way. And when you work in a job like that. And so getting out of my own way was a big thing for me. And just giving myself that confidence that, I can do it. I can see what happens. I know that this idea is something that is going to really grow and my vision is clear. It's getting clearer by the minute, but it will be something that will ultimately really impact women worldwide in that first year of after having a baby. It's tough on so many people.
And you know what? Having that self belief in you and your ability that it will help people, that it will solve problems worldwide is absolutely huge. And I think that's so aspirational for anybody who has a little bit of self doubt, thinking about, what they can do in the future. And thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's really important that people understand that you need that self belief that just because you give up something doesn't mean that there isn't something more to come in the future. And you talked about perfectionism, and I think that's really interesting. I think radiographers, probably in radiotherapy, fall into one or two categories from my experience, albeit some time ago. It's been a while since I practiced. But I think in my mind, radiotherapy is not black and white because people are not black and white, and therefore patients' anatomy, looking at scans, comparing what you see now in front of you before you give treatment to what was there at the CT. I think that's so different, and I think you get people who are very black and white, and if it doesn't quite match exactly, that's when problems start. And I was kind of not lax at all because clearly you have to be accurate. I'm not saying that it's about accuracy, but you have to understand that maybe something isn't quite exactly the same as it was a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And I think you have to have that freedom. And I think that skill there of being able to understand that there is a bit of a grey fuzzy area helps people move forward as well. Because as you go into business, you said you may not know everything now. Your plan's becoming clearer, but actually you don't need it perfect right now. You need to just get out there, show yourself, start talking to people, which is exactly what you've done. And I applaud you for doing it because I think the move that you've made is incredible and so brave. And I think people need to understand that it really is possible. Was there one final moment, the straw that broke the camel's back, when you looked to leave? Was there something just tipped you over the edge and you said, right, that's it?
I wouldn't say that there was one thing as such, but it was more that when I was pregnant with my son and I was still working, I found that really challenging, even though, at the time, everyone was so great around me. Honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better manager or better colleagues. Everyone was so understanding, but it was more of a personal feeling that I had. It wasn't necessarily a one thing, but it was more kind of something that I thought, okay, I can do something. I should look to do something else. And it was kind of sad in a way because something that I'd done for 15 years and I had a lot of pride that I felt like I was very good at my job and, you know, had a lot of experience in and, uh, you know, making decisions under pressure and all of those things I felt like I was really good at. And then now coming into something that I don't know that well in terms of I have my vision, but in terms of like coding for the app and different things to do with business related areas, those are not things that, I know. So it's kind of that, it's things I'm learning, I'm finding out, I'm researching, I'm making sure that I have attention to detail with the things that I need to. So it's very nice in a way going back to the start of something that I don't know everything and I can learn. So that's really nice as well.
I think that again, that's so important because there's a huge support network for you out there. And just like when you start in radiotherapy, in any job, you don't really know what's going on. You've got maybe some underlying skills and you build up. And soon enough, when you look back, you forget that you didn't know certain things. And I think that's the same now. When you start to build a business, you are unsure about quite what to do. You've got some, you've got the grounding, you want your app, you want to build it, you've got the kind of end goal, but sometimes getting there is is tricky and you need the help and support around you. And as soon as people realize and understand, I don't know everything, I can't do it all on my own, I need help and ask for help. And that's huge. That is a really big thing for people to do. That's when it all opens up. And I think that is what propels people from an idea, which clearly you had, to something that really is very successful.
Yeah, and I'm so amazed at the amount of people that have reached out to me personally, either to say, keep going, you're doing really well, just that little bit of encouragement, even from people that I don't know. It means so much as well when sometimes like the journey as a founder can be lonely because it's just you know, at various points throughout the day. But then also people from the radiotherapy community as well have reached out sort of saying, oh, if you have any, they can help with various bits, which is so nice and just a testament to what the community is like and how everyone is so supportive and just really sees the vision, which is really, really nice.
All the negativity in the world, actually, there is an awful amount of positivity. And if you fish in the right pond, then you find amazing help and that amazing support. Go back to your colleagues. You mentioned your colleagues then. When you told people that you were leaving, what was their reaction?
Their reaction, they weren't surprised because I've had, like my kids, and everyone kind of knew that they came first in my eyes. So I don't think people were surprised. I think that people were very sad about it, just sort of because I'd worked my way up over the years. So, to leave at that point was just, I think it was confusing perhaps for some people as to why I would leave that position. But, I think everyone was really supportive and sort of respected my decision. So that was really like kind.
Yeah. And I think people are supportive. People understand it. I think especially again, once you've had kids, I think people understand that desire. I was speaking to someone the other day and she did similar, different field, but similar. And she said, a lot of her colleagues were saying, oh, well, you're so brave for doing it. And I think that's quite a common reaction. And I think really what that means is, I wish I could do it. I just don't know how, or I don't have a plan to do it. And I think that's the bit that people are in awe of because actually it takes a lot. And I said before, it's a very brave move to leave something that you've known for 15 years and take a leap of faith to do something completely different.
But do you know what, Dave? When people were telling me that, I got a lot of that. Oh, you're really brave for doing it. I kind of just didn't really believe them in a way because I was at that stage where, I'm in a very different position now. But at that time, I didn't even have a prototype of my app. So I kind of was just thinking, well, not really. Everyone would say that to me, and I would think, well, not really. you know,
Mad,
leave.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, a bit delusional in a way, but
absolutely delusional. But I think all great entrepreneurs, solopreneurs are absolutely delusional because I think we have to be, because
yeah,
otherwise you never do anything. And you look at some of the great kind of people that are out there, and everyone is, I think, probably slightly mad, slightly crazy, because we have complete self belief, really, somewhere. We have, don't get me wrong, we have those bad days. And I'll sit here sometimes and think, what am I doing? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? But ultimately, I would never go back. And actually, I read about LinkedIn this morning. My son, and we'll come back to kids shortly, actually. My son gave me a massive hug this morning. We've had a very difficult few weeks with him. He's raging hormones, but I pick him up from school every day. So, like, yes, I actually finished when he came home from school, and we had a really good conversation and a really good chat, a few tears, a bit of anger. And then it came out that he was struggling with X, Y, and Z. If I had to be at work straddling shifts, worrying about patients. And like you said earlier, giving all my attention, all my emotion to someone else. When you get home, you're drained. You can't support your family. You can't support your children, your friends, as actually you want to as a person, because we're all quite caring people. That's why we go into healthcare. When we give that to someone that isn't for us, I think it is makes such a difference. And I'm sure now you feel much more free and in control to spend time with your kids, to take them to nursery, to do whatever you need to do with them.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's healthcare in general attracts these like people like us that, we care deeply for people. And, whether somebody is in healthcare or starting their solo journey, it is about kind of having that mental resilience too, that how do I set my own boundaries that, okay, like for example, for myself, yes, I'm not in healthcare anymore, but still I am having to check myself often to sort of say, well, no, I'm not going to work on this part of the app, or I'm not going to do any other emails. I'm not going to respond to these things because I'm like actively going to be spending time with my kids, or I'm going to be making their dinner, or just talking to them, these sort of serve and return moments that I would otherwise miss if I was worried about doing like other things that I need to do. Because now I'm finding that the challenge for me right now is that I'm trying to really build this up, and I'm really putting all of my energy into this because I really believe in how helpful it could be to many mums, so many people. But then at the same time, it's like, well, I have to, one, look after myself, and two, make sure that this doesn't then impact on the other areas of my life that are equally as important to me. So it is that kind of toss up a little bit.
You have to have that balance. And I think a lot of people who come out of employment and go into self employment, entrepreneurship, whatever you want to label it as, feel guilty around working shifts and working patterns because we are so entrenched in a 9 to 5, 8 to 4, 12 to 12, whatever that shift pattern looks like. We're so entrenched, and society as a whole tells us that this is when we work. So when you come out of it and you think, I need to just go make a coffee, or I'm just going to get down to the shop. When that first happens, I think people feel very guilty. So I've got to be tied to my desk. I'm working. I've got to work. And it takes quite a while to get into routine to go, actually, I can't work 24/7. And many entrepreneurs would love to and do it. Sometimes my brain is on 24/7, but you have to force yourself to stop. And then suddenly you realize that actually, I can go to the shop if I want to go to the shop. I can take the dog out for a walk, and you build a new routine and a new life that suits what you're doing without the guilt of thinking that you have to work. And that's the bit I think that people really miss and misunderstand. I got up at 6 o'clock this morning, not because I'm some hero at 6 o'clock. It's just I like to get up. I do about 40 minutes work in the mornings before my kids get up and to drag their teenage butts out of bed. And the other end of the day, I'll stop maybe at 3 when I go and get them from school, and I'll probably work around 7:30 if there's something needs doing until maybe 8. They go to bed later and later and later. You are at a very different stage of your children's life. Mine just
Yeah.
hang on as long as they can, and actually, I'll let them do that. They do their homework, and I can think, "Well, I'm not missing anything. They're in their rooms doing what they're doing. I might as well just crack on and do something." And that for me is the trade-off between that kind of the 9 to 5, what people imagine it to be. It's my birthday tomorrow. I'm taking the day off because I can. I will probably still thank you. But they're the trade-off, and I think that's the bit, and I'm so pleased to hear that you are getting into that routine. I wanna go back then to the idea of Meet Nanny. Any parent listening, father, mother, will understand that 1 a.m. strolling up and down the landing, trying to get a child to sleep. Tell me how that then developed into the idea for Nanny.
So, Nanny, as I said, the birth of it was when I was just holding my son and walking backwards and forwards with him. In those moments, I thought to myself, how great would it be if I could just have something in my ears to tell me that, you're doing a good job, Pooja. Like, this is hard. But there are so many people out there, at the same time, 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. in the morning, that are awake with their kids as well. And, you know, as much as I used all of the sleep apps and all the host of apps that are out there for my daughter, for my son, nothing worked really. My beliefs were challenged with my son because he was just not conforming to any wake window pattern, sleep schedule, self-soothing,
Yeah.
giving
Yeah.
before bed, all of it, all of everything that I've tried just did not work. And it was just more that, you know, people can go into the postpartum period sort of thinking like, God, what am I doing kind of thing. And just having something there at your fingertips that you just reach for and you can say, "Oh, I'm feeling like this today." And it gives you something back to say, you know what, you're doing okay. And then it plays you an audio to say, to sort of have the words that you're trying to find, but can't quite put your finger on. And it's just something that is immediate. It's not medical advice or, anything like that, but it's a start. It's something that you can just sort of press and tap and just, that's it.
At 1 a.m., nobody wants medical advice. You just want to know that you're doing okay, that,
Yeah.
that it's going to be all right. You're not alone and it's perfectly normal.
Yeah. And, I'm refining the prototype as I get more and more users to sort of have different elements and different features to it. And essentially for it to be more personalized to you. So that's what I'll say about it for now without giving too much away.
Okay, we'll absolutely come back to it. I want to dig a bit deeper into it. Isn't it? Interesting as well, though, isn't it? When he says your son didn't conform, that goes back to that life's not black and white.
Yeah.
You can read 101 different parenting books. I have a couple up there. I maybe read them, maybe I didn't. What I do know and what I say to all new parents is read the books, listen to all the advice that someone is going to give you, and then do your own thing. Because every child is different. And I think what you're doing is amazing because I actually do just need that support that I'm doing all right. I'm going to hear someone supporting me. And I think that is so important. What's some of the feedback been so far about the app?
A lot of it has been really, really positive, sort of saying that, I wish I had it when my kids were little. It's lovely that you can do it one-handed. But I felt in the beginning that using my voice as the audios was a bit cringy in a way, but then everyone has been saying that my voice is actually quite nice on there, which is really nice to hear,
Yeah,
actually.
I think that's really reassuring. And
Yeah.
you're right. It probably is a bit cringy. It's like when you do a video for social media. I don't know how many you do. I did a whole year of it last year. And first off, everyone go, "Oh God, is that what I really sound like?
Yeah.
It's dreadful." And then actually after a bit, you go, "That is what I sound like." It may not to me, but that's what the world hears me as, and you just have to get on with it. And
And
that
patience,
cringe level just decreases.
yeah. Patients used to tell me quite a lot that when, because sometimes with the radiotherapy, I used to coach them to breathe in and out. So for patients used to tell me a lot that, oh, Pooja, you've got a really good voice. You've got radio voice. And I was, when you just shrug something off, wow, that's fine. But then now having my voice actually out there in public and people saying that is
And there's
really
one of
nice.
those skills, right, that you maybe didn't know you had, or someone
No.
said it and you go, "Oh, yeah, whatever, it's just what it is." And I think that's really nice, and I'm sure we've all been there where, you have radiographers who don't care, whatever, go on the bed. Yeah, it does happen. I work with someone specifically, and I always wondered why she ever went into a caring profession because she was lovely, but not really. And then you have the super patronizing you know, people. And don't think that helps either. And I think you have that lovely tone that just sits nicely between. And I can imagine being a patient and just feeling very welcomed by you. So I think having that on your app, and that's some real ownership there as well. You're not farming out, you're not using AI. That is what you are saying, and that lived experience and authority comes through using your own voice? When you started, obviously leaving a job, there are some financial burdens around that.
Yeah.
Starting your own business, there's some financial burdens around that and implications. Creating an app, absolutely some financial issues there. Although with some of the apps in AI now, so
Yeah.
much easier to create and much easier. How did you manage some of that financial pressure when you
I
left?
think between myself and my husband, we kind of decided that essentially, in order to fund this, because I'm not making any money from the app right now while I'm testing it, he would be taking on a lot more of the working longer hours so that I could then be there at all of the like pickups, drop offs. We basically wouldn't be sending the children in longer than they needed to. And it would just be kind of cutting back on that. And then he is taking on the slack, which I think when sometimes I was at home previously and I was on maternity leave, there was like that little bit of resentment sort of saying, well, to my husband, well, you get a coffee break, you get a coffee break, you get a tea break, you get to sit down and eat your lunch. I have to eat my lunch cold. But then I didn't quite realize the other side of it, which is that, he misses all of the bath times. He misses all of the bedtimes. He misses all of the like messing around when the kids are messing around. He misses all of those moments, which is like a big sacrifice as well. And, I'm incredibly grateful that he is, doing that for us, for our family. But it's something that I feel like isn't spoken about enough, that there is a sacrifice on the other side to then enable, like, for me to look after my children, but also to be able to do what I want to do as well. That is a big sacrifice.
Yeah, and I think making those sacrifices is very hard for people. Having the understanding that there are the two sides, and as a working dad with my first child, I would come home and my then wife had been stuck at home. She was very colicky, my daughter, and you know, I really sympathise with the one end because I would come home from work and I'd almost take the night shift, but I missed the fun bits. I missed the bit in the day where she was laughing, giggling. I've got videos still now on my phone of that. And it is really hard when you miss that. And I think trying to find that balance between people and having a supportive partner is so helpful in that. What did your husband say when you first floated the idea of leaving?
He was very supportive of me leaving because at that time, I hadn't really, the idea of nanny hadn't solidified. So he was very supportive of me leaving, sort of saying, well, then you can be more present for the children and that will be okay. I'll pick up the slack there. And then the more and more like I thought about nanny, I didn't fully disclose at the time exactly what my, where I was at, where my thought process was at with nanny. But I sort of quietly in the background created the prototype and then showed him. And so then he was very supportive at that point, sort of saying, wow, like this is actually really good. So yeah, before then it sort of on the surface to everybody around me, it just seemed like when my kids weren't at home, I wasn't really doing that much or I was taking a nap or something. But I actually wasn't. I was just trying to get this off the ground.
That's funny when you say about people think you're taking a nap. It's completely the opposite to the guilt we talked about just now, where we feel guilty that we're not doing something and that
Yeah.
we're maybe nipping out to go and grab a quick sandwich, go to the gym, pick up the kids. Everyone else looks in and thinks, well, you must just do nothing. What do you do? Just swan around the house all day, send a couple of emails. Like, no, that is not what we do at all. Do you think your relationship with your husband has improved since becoming self employed?
I mean, I think we always had a very strong relationship purely because we kind of challenge each other and ask the difficult questions sometimes that even if we don't want to, we go ahead and ask them and sort of talk things through, which I think, like, we are very different people. So he works in healthcare as well. So we are very different. But we've found a way to kind of like communicate together and just work together, and also really solidify our shared vision and goals for the future. And we've got quite specific about that. So, in that way, we've both been able to take on different areas of like the house management and management of life, basically. Because it's like it is difficult when maybe someone doesn't have a partner that isn't as supportive, because sometimes you might feel as if you do everything, but when in actual fact you have things that he does, things that you do. And even sometimes now, like, I catch myself sort of saying, well, oh, I feel like I'm always the one that has to anticipate the things, like, for example, going out and packing the bags or packing things for any holiday or outing, or making sure there's enough nappies, etc. But then I know that on the other side of things, he's the one that's sorting out the insurance, making sure that the cars are insured, what is the best price we're getting for things. So, like, he's the one that is actually got all of that on his plate as well, which sometimes when you're in it and you're in your own bubble, you sometimes forget what the other person is taking care of. So, like, I'm constantly kind of reminding myself that actually, he is doing a hell of a lot as well, and he's sacrificing a hell of a lot for me to do this. So yeah, I'm very, very grateful.
I'm sure he'll listen and support that as well. And I think that communication is key, isn't it? I think all of that can be summarized. Communication is key. You've got to have that communication. Whatever we do, personal life, business, you've got to have it. Otherwise, everything just falls apart. And you have to find that right balance. And you mentioned nappies. I'm so glad my children are out of nappies. That is yeah, that's a gloriously freeing moment.
I can't wait.
I want to go back and talk about identity, because I think that's something that is really crucial for people to understand, communicate about, and see that the identity you start with and the identity you think you have isn't actually really you per se. So tell me, you mentioned earlier you're a radiographer, 15 years, it's all you felt you'd ever been and could ever be. How did you get through and over some of that identity crisis, if you will?
I think I was questioning my identity long before I left radiotherapy, purely because my upbringing, I'm Indian. I'm from an Asian background, and I'm very proud of that. A lot of the cultural nuances in my culture is that you grow up, go to university, you get a good job, you get something with a excellent pension scheme. You do the work, you get married to someone, and then you have children. That generally is a trajectory that the older generations perhaps might expect one to do. I wouldn't say that was necessarily true in my case, but I would just say that that is out there. There is that element out there.
For sure.
And so from my point of view, I kind of felt like, okay, I have got this job. I love it. I will do it until I retire. When my kids come along, my kids are my life, they will be the priority. This is what I thought at the time. And then, that's it. Like, that will be it for me. But then I started to question that when my daughter came along, because I sort of thought, well, actually, my kids, yes, they are a priority to me, but they're also not the most important thing. I am the most important thing, because without me being the best version of myself, I'm not going to be able to give my fullest to everyone else in my family. Leaving radiotherapy as well was also obviously a shock to my family, understandably so.
I can imagine.
Understandably so. I'm leaving something that is very, very stable, secure. To do what exactly? My pension isn't there. I don't have a pension. I don't get sick pay or anything like that. So I can completely understand where those concerns came from. But I am very headstrong at the same time. I think I get that from my parents, whether they want to admit that or not. I do get that from them. And so I had this idea and I sort of said, well, I'm gonna run with it. I'm gonna do it. So, that was kind of where my identity was, and also learning that my identity isn't tied to my job, my relationships, who I care for. My identity is who I am as a person, and that has taken years to understand, who am I? Actually, who am I? Underneath all of the what I tell myself, underneath all of the stories that might be on top of that, actually, who is Pooja? You know, and that is someone I'm separate from my kids, from my family, from my work. I am who I am. And I love that now.
And that is an emotional intelligence that I think takes quite some time to get to the bottom of. And I would go as far as to say, I don't think you can leave a role until you have that bit sorted out, until you understand who you are, what you want, and actually admit that it's okay to say, I come first. I think that's when you can make that move and finally say, actually, I'm going to put myself first and I am happy with me. And therefore, I can make a change to my life. Now, I think that emotional intelligence is so important. And also, when you come from a cultural background where there is almost an expected route that you have to take, and I talk about it, and I think it's the same. There's lots of different cultures that have it, and to an extent, I was very much expected to go to school. I went to private school. I was expected to do my A levels, go to university, get my degree, and I followed that. That's what I thought. And I thought I'll do my masters, then I'll do my PhD, and I'm going to run the world, and it's going to be amazing. The reality is very different from that, and I think for certain people who are forced, and healthcare is particularly bad, to a trajectory of medicine, pharmacy, anything else within healthcare. I, I say it's a career built on a fault line because you're forced into it, quote unquote, but it's never really you. So I'm not surprised then when people look at coming out. And it's not the case in every circumstance, but certainly people are expected to go into a career for whatever reason. And actually, that's never a good grounding, to finish and stay in something that makes you unhappy. And I think, again, you have to understand you and what you want to be able to be brave enough and strong enough to say, actually, enough. It's not what I want anymore.
And also that's so true. And also something that can really be serving you at the beginning may not be something that serves you later down the line. Like, for example, in my case, in the beginning, before kids, I thought, this is amazing. Like, I love radiotherapy. And like I said, I will always love radiotherapy. But it's that things that you don't think about until until I had the kids, that I thought, this isn't quite working as well as I think. But what else is there? So it's
Life changes. I don't think we necessarily fundamentally change. I look back at my career and I think actually all of my roles have been around caring in one capacity or another. Because I've had dips in and out of healthcare, but actually everything, and even now, the work that I do now is to help people. That's what I was put here for. In religious, non-religious, doesn't matter. I'm here to help and serve people, and my career has shown that. And I think just because you leave, and going back to the identity bit, just because you leave doesn't mean you're less caring, less capable, can't perform in the same way. You have a great prospect ahead of you. And I think once you understand that your identity is you, not your job title, then I think you have that freedom to be able to move forward.
Yeah. And also that even the identity situation, I feel like it hit me like a double whammy because I was a new mom and I had my identity wrapped around in that as well. So it was kind of a shock to the system twice because it was two lots of work that I had to do to unpick, like, actually, what's going on here? What do I really want?
And we don't give ourselves enough credit for that, I don't think, actually. As adults as a whole, I think, again, just touching on my son, raging teenage hormones. He has no idea who he is. What he's doing is, just all over the place. Actually, even as we get older, a new job being made redundant, a promotion, a failed promotion, becoming a parent, losing a parent, you know, we're suddenly expected to carry on. And my son, one of the things that my son said to me last night was, "You're the adult, you've got all the answers." I'm like,
No.
"No, bud. I'm sorry, mate. I really, really don't. I wish I did. Like you're sat here in tears and I wish I could help you. That's not how it works. I don't have all the answers." And I think when we become parents, when we find something else, married, divorced, whatever it is, we have to allow ourselves a bit of time to get used to that situation. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. And again, being able to accept all of that, I think, is part of that growth and stands us in great stead when we look at developing our business. So I want to come back to your business. That ties in very nicely. What's the plan? Where are you going with it? Where are you at? What do you need? How can we help?
So at the moment, so my app is a postpartum support tool that mothers, potentially fathers in the future, use at that 1 to 3 a.m. moments, maybe, or maybe throughout the day, just to kind of help ease those low levels of stress moments, perhaps during the day or during the night. Because as people with kids know, sometimes it's not one episode that makes you feel stressed. It's those constant little ones throughout the day that, you don't quite, you don't feel like, oh, I need to speak to somebody in terms of my GP or my health visitor, but it's just those little times. And then somehow at the end of the day or after a couple of hours, you feel completely drained and you don't really know why. So Nanny is a tool that I've developed to help with that. And the vision for it is at the moment, it is there to help mums within the first year. But my vision for that is for it to help mums basically when you have a baby and then it holds your hand, it holds you all the way throughout that first year when everything changes and then holds your hand into, when you're expected to go back to work. If you want to go back to work, it will help you figure out, what do I want? So that's the vision for it.
Great.
I feel like it could be something that is going to be really, really helpful
I,
for
I
so
have
many people out there.
I have absolutely no doubt that it will be. It's an online app, is that right?
Yes, at the moment it's a web app, and I'll send the details to you that you can.
Absolutely put it in the description, all the posts. I want people to use it. And what can people do currently with the app? How can they help you? Are you looking for feedback? What are they going to get from the app right now?
So at the moment, they're going to get something to help them feel just even 1% better after they use it. That will be through the form of audios and affirmations that they get back based on what they type in. At the moment, I'm trying to test it out. So I'd love anyone who is a mum, whether that's a new mum or second time around, or anyone really that just would like to have a play with it and just tell me what they think. I would love that too. I'd love good feedback, bad feedback, anything in between feedback. I just love it all. So I can help develop it and make it better.
Amazing. And as I say, I will put a link in the description and, we will get people to do that for you. I'd look at the app myself. And I think on that homepage, there was some "How are you feeling?" Is that right? Is that where it starts?
Yeah.
How
So there's like a sort of a landing page
amazing.
saying that Nanny's there with you through all of the moments
Great.
like that. And
Great.
then there's a box to say how you're feeling. You
I
can
love that.
type.
So there was a word that came up on that front page that stumped me.
Yeah.
Very bottom one. Do you know where I'm going with this? And I believe that the phrase or the emotion is matrescence.
Yes.
And I think the feeling was match scene. Is that right? Is that how you say it?
Matrescence. Yeah. Yeah. Matrescence.
Okay. Explain it to me.
So matrescence has been talked about a lot in the women's health space at the moment. It is a term used to show your evolution throughout motherhood. I think I'm talking about it correctly. I'm sure other people will correct me if I'm wrong, but that is what I understand by it. The evolution of, when you first become a mum, and essentially as your baby grows, you grow. And that's what matrescence is. And sometimes a lot of people come into the postpartum period, and I did as well, my first time around, sort of thinking, oh gosh, who am I? What am I doing here? This feels like an overwhelming responsibility. I've got hormones raging everywhere. I feel angry, all of the feelings that I was experiencing. And there's a word for it, and that's the word is matrescence. This journey that you're on, this evolution.
I think it's so important that people understand that because again, that it ties in with identity and that psychological identity. There is a huge shift when you become a mother, he says, as if he knows. Likewise, father.
Yeah.
And I think it's underrated, and especially from a man's point of view. You know, you have a wife, partner, has a baby, and everything changes. Like the world is just so different. And I think being able to talk through that, and I think, look, I'm not a big fan of labeling things. I think we do that far too often these days. But I think when there is real need for it is in cases like this. And having people focused on something allows them to understand that they're not alone. It's all perfectly normal. It is all a bit fuzzy, and other people are going through it. And I think that's why the app for me and what you're trying to do is a fantastic idea, and B will be so successful because people just need that support. They need to understand that it's okay. And I love it. And I think that's why I just think what you're doing is so helpful. And I know that it will benefit so many people.
Yeah, I mean, that's the real hope that, from this, people feel a little bit better and kind of understand a bit that, what you're going through, it's not the fact that you may be struggling, but this is normal. Like with a kid, and if it's your first one, sometimes it can feel overwhelming. And I think that there is a lot in society these days that I was susceptible to as well in the beginning, that when your baby comes along, you'll just know, mother's intuition. The moment you hold your baby in your arms, you will feel this rush of joy. I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't feel any of those things.
Nonsense. Utter
I didn't feel that.
yeah. Do you know, and again, from a father's point of view, I remember holding my daughter not long after she was home from hospital, kind of holding her and just thinking, I don't know what I'm meant to do. I know I'm
Yeah.
meant to love you, but you're just a ball of crying,
Yes.
doing mess. Like, I love you, clear. I do. And I was like, my daughter's my absolute pride and joy, clearly. But I just don't know, I don't know what to say. And it's funny because now, and it sounds a little bit corny, but the theme from Beauty and the Beast, Taylor's Eldest Time, has a
Mm,
great phraseology. It's barely even friends, and then somebody bends. And it's that, like, it's that I don't know what I'm meant to do here, but over time it suddenly grows. But if you don't know that and you don't understand it, it feels so lonely.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's just amazing that sometimes, even now, I can, most of the time, I'm the one that's like with the kids. And even for myself, I can feel myself going through really happy emotions and then also feeling a bit stressed when they're both kind of crying at the same time, or someone's got a nosebleed, someone needs the toilet. And you're only one person. So sometimes you can go through different feelings all within the space of an hour.
And I hate to be a spoiler alert here, but that doesn't change. In fact,
Yeah.
it almost gets worse. That I can talk to my daughters, and we're having a great, happy conversation, and clearly I'll say something, and then
Yeah.
you're like, "Wow, what did I say?" And look, that's parenting, right? Absolute highs of just
Yeah.
amazing emotions, down to just like despair. I'm happy to admit I've spent many hours on my knees crying with my kids because I'm like, I don't know what you want from me. I don't understand. And anyone who says that there aren't moments when they just want to scream, tell their kids to leave, get out, is lying. Because
Yeah.
as much as I love my children, and I do with all of my heart, I'd never do it, I'd never hurt them. But there are times I'm like, please leave. Go live in the garden. I'm done. Like, I don't want to see you anymore. Like, I don't mean it, but that's the reality of being a parent. Is that, you know what? Sometimes you know, there are moments where I really dislike my children, and that's the reality. And again, I think what you're doing is helping people through some of that.
Yeah.
What's the vision? 10 years down the line, what's the vision? Where do you want to be? Who's Pooja going to be in 10 years?
Who's Pooja going to be, or where the app's going to be?
Both.
That's a great question. And there's just so many things. But ultimately, for myself, I don't feel that I would have changed fundamentally, because I feel like I'm very secure in who I am now. And I'm really happy with how things are at the moment. And I'm very grateful for where I am right now. I feel like in 10 years' time, I probably would have done more work on myself. Hopefully, I would have taken up a bit more breath work and meditation and made that part of my routine, more so than it is at the moment, because I'm a bit lax with it at the moment. But yeah, fundamentally, I feel that I want to make effort to be where I am right now. And I feel like that's especially important as Nanny grows, because I have such a big vision for it. And I'm really excited about the promise of it and how much it's going to help people. I'm really conscious to not lose myself in that, because I think it would be very easy to do, and that may start little by little, doing a bit more in the evenings or doing a bit more, or, all of that. But I'm just trying to intentionally stop myself and prioritize and really prioritize my list, like what is really important right now. So I imagine Nanny success to be really successful in 10 years' time. Hopefully for it to be not just within the UK, but abroad as well. But for myself, I'm happy.
And that is the main thing. And I want to finish then asking you this.
I would say,
For anyone who is currently in a healthcare role, starting to think, I can't do this for another 5 or 10 years, I want out, what advice would you give them?
I would say really take some time and drill down on why you want out in the first place. And, think about it properly, write it out. And also write out what you feel your purpose is in your life right now. I think there's a Japanese phrase, ikigai, which talks about your purpose in different areas of your life. So maybe try and do that first off. And then thereafter, if you still feel that you want to come out, think about what your transferable skills are, because everyone has so many. Even if, you're a stay-at-home mum, but still you have so many skills, and sometimes that's overlooked. Sometimes you have some of the best skills if you're a stay-at-home mum, if I'm honest. So there's always opportunity out there if you're willing to not take no for an answer, be a little bit stubborn, and just shoot your shot and just see what happens.
Absolutely sound advice, and I couldn't agree more. Sometimes just got to go with it. What's the worst that can happen? Pooja, thank you so much for your time. I absolutely love what you're doing. Always happy to talk radiotherapy, as we talked about previously. Thank you so much. I wish you all the very best for everything that comes for you, for the app, and for your family. I'll actually put links to the app and you in the description, and people, please do go and look out the app. It is fantastic. Pooja, thank you and have an awesome day.
Thank you.